You have been requesting this video, and I'm going to make it happen, but buckle up, y'all, because it's gonna be a long one. Hi, Shanna Rowe Jackson here, also known as Caution Artist at Play, because I play with all kinds of different art supplies, and today, babies, that's what we are doing. I am going to be comparing 6 popular lines of watercolor pencils, and it's going to be a lot. There's a lot of information. I'm talking light fastness, I'm talking about working properties and transparency and blendability and all that stuff. I'm going to be swatching. I'm going to be doing a piece with all 6 of them in it, and we're getting right down to the nitty-gritty in this video. So today we are going to be comparing the Derwent Watercolor Pencils, the Koh I Noor Mondeluz Watercolor Pencils, the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer Watercolor Pencils. Then we're going to be swapping to Caran and trying out their Supracolor Pencils and their Museum Aquarelle Pencils, and we are going to tie it up neatly in a little bow that is known as the Derwent Inktense. Now, I know some of you are going to be like, why Inktense? That's kind of different. It belongs in its own category. However, Derwent Inktense are, in fact, a water-soluble colored pencil, meaning they are a colored pencil that can be diluted and mixed with water. And they are my go-to water-soluble pencil. And of course, I had to put it in here. And then I'm going to put this reminder at the beginning of the video because it has to be said in every Derwent Inktense video I do lately. But according to the frequently asked questions on the Derwent website, Inktense are in fact considered a watercolor product, but they were formulated so that they can look like an ink. I will pop that up here like I always do, and I will put resources in the description below so you can study up more on that. But we've got a lot to cover here, so I'm going to just jump into it. Okay, so I'm going to start off by swatching a sampling of colors. I chose out a bunch of colors that matched as closely as I could between all of these different brands, and I am just going down the line and I'm putting them in dry first, and then I'm going to come back with water. My main thing that I want to see here is how well they blend out with water, how vibrant they are, and I also kind of want to see how well they work dry. Layering and things like that, that's going to come later on when I actually work on a piece. And I am working on the Arches Hot Press 140-pound watercolor paper, which is also the same paper that I will be using when I work on a piece where I use all of these pencils. And so I'm just going in, I'm starting dark on one end and lightening as I go down to have a little bit of a gradient, and then I will come in with my water. And this is giving me a little bit of a feel of how good they feel in the hand, and as well as how well and vibrant they show up on their own just as a dry pencil. Because if you know me, you know that I want to be able to utilize all the aspects of these pencils. I don't want just the watercolor aspect. I want to be able to use them as colored pencils as well for detail. And then I'm just going through, and I am being very careful to clean my brush in between each one. And you can kind of see, this isn't like my best filming, but you're getting kind of an idea of how they're each washing out. Of course, swatches really only tell part of the story, which is why I'm going to do a piece in a little while. But some of them already you can tell wash out way more easily than others when it comes to getting rid of that kind of pencil texture. The yellows all seem super vibrant. And then I have a kind of a mid to light green. I had a hard time matching up all the colors in every line that I had because some of them I had fewer pencils than others. Like for the Supracolor, I only have an 18 set, and so it's a little bit limiting with the amount of colors that I can choose, but I chose as closely as I could. And then you'll see a better view of all of them and what order they're in just a moment. But basically, each of the 6 lines has its own column of colors. So here is the actual color chart. You can see I started off with the Derwent Watercolor, then I moved on to the Mondeluz, the Albrecht Durer, Caran Supracolor, Caran Museum Aquarelle, and then Inktense is in the last column. Right off the bat, looking at these swatches, a few things that stood out to me immediately are the fact that the Museum Aquarelle, the Supracolor, and the Inktense are all very vibrant, as well as the Albrecht Durer. The Albrecht Durer by Faber-Castell seemed to blend out more thoroughly with water. You're not seeing as much of that pencil texture showing through. And again, I didn't go crazy with the water. This is kind of like one pass over, maybe two passes over with the water. And so you can already see that the Albrecht Durer blends out really easily with water, which is something to keep in mind. And then I also decided to do some black swatches on some cold press paper because some people have said that they prefer to use watercolor pencils on cold press paper because you get more bang for your buck that way. I like to do high detail, so I'm not a fan of the texture of the cold press, but you can see how well it washes out on the cold press underneath there. But also this gives us an idea of how dark the blacks get in each of these lines, as well as if they're on the cold side or the warm side. Using a cold press paper does allow for more pigment to come off with fewer strokes. And so these did get pretty pigmented pretty fast. I was really impressed with the Derwent Watercolor. That's a little bit more on the cool side of black. I was really impressed with how dark it got with very few strokes. That being said, you can still see a lot of that grainy pencil texture showing through because this is a textured paper. And this was done on the Arches 140-pound cold press paper. Then I also did a test on black paper to see how opaque their white pencils were, and I have to say that my favorite white pencil was probably the Caran Museum Aquarelle. Their Supracolor was alright. I was pretty impressed with the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer considering I really don't like the white polychromos, so I was pretty impressed by that. The Inktense pencil didn't hold up as well as I would have liked, but if you like to use Derwent Inktense, I suggest getting the blocks, at least for the white, because that's where you're going to get the most opacity. And this is the Stonehenge Aqua Black Hot Press 140-pound paper. Now let's take a closer look at each individual pencil line. We're going to start off with the classic Derwent watercolor pencils. There are 72 colors in this line, and they come in sets of 12, 24, 36, and 72, as well as open stock. Now, taking a look at their color chart, they do have lightfast ratings available. They are available on the color chart, but not on the pencils themselves. And they do a rating system with numbers from 1 to 8, with 8 being excellent and 1 to 2 being fugitive. And so let's kind of take a little look at the ratio here. They have 10 colors that are considered fugitive. 5 of them are rated 1 and 5 of them are rated 2. Then they have 18 colors that are rated fair to moderate. And so 5 of those are rated 3 and 12 of those are rated 4. Then they have 16 colors that are rated good to very good, and that's split between 8 that are rated 5 and 8 that are rated 6. And then they have 27 colors that are considered excellent. 9 of those are rated a 7 and 18 of them are rated an 8. And this again is according to the Blue Wool scale. So that's kind of average, though I must say that out of the colors in this video, out of the lines in this video, this one has the most fugitive colors. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Let's take a quick look at the pencil itself. It has the classic Derwent branding. It says watercolor right on the side with a little paintbrush to signify that it's water soluble. It is octagonal, which means it won't roll off the desk very easily, and the end of it is painted so that it matches what color you are using. Now let's jump right into the piece. I split this paper into 6 equal parts so that each pencil will have its own little spot on the page. And I am starting in the first corner with my Derwent watercolor pencils. Now, the first thing that I am noticing when I jump in is that these are not vibrant right off the bat. The petal, because this is going to be a flower, the petal I decided to go in very lightly with just watercolor washes. So what I did was I scribbled my pencil on my Caran Aquarelle palette, which if you don't have one of those, or if it's really expensive where you're at, if you get like a plastic textured cutting board from Amazon for cheap, it will work the same way. So I scribbled it on there and then I picked it up with my wet brush and painted it on. Because the petals are going to be a little bit more subtle, I wanted to build those up in layers. And then I'm going into the background with the pencils themselves before washing all of that out. And the first thing that I noticed is these are definitely thinner than most of Derwent's pencils. Derwent pencils are typically this thick, chunky, really comfortable, round pencil that fits in the hand really well and is easy to grip. Now, the fact that this is octagonal definitely makes it easy to grip, but the fact that it's a little bit thinner makes it more lightweight than the other Derwent pencils, and it feels a little bit cheaper in the hand than what I am used to from Derwent. That's just an observation. It doesn't necessarily mean it is cheaper, but it just kind of doesn't feel as high quality as some of their other products. Now, I am going in and washing this out, and I have to say, these are doing much better on this paper than a cheaper paper. So that is something to keep in mind when you're working with any pencil or any watercolor in general. Paper really matters. And it really, really matters when it comes to watercolor pencils, I'm finding. Because I have swatched these recently on other papers and they don't do that well. I have to be honest, I did not have high hopes for the Derwent watercolor pencils because they just don't tend to be as vibrant as some of the other colors that you will see here. That being said, I was able to build things up in layers really well, and I was really happy about that. Because it is a watercolor product, it is easy to lift and reactivate layers below, which can make it more difficult to layer. But I didn't have these lifting in places where I didn't want them to. So they didn't lift too easily, if that makes sense. They reactivated when I needed them to, but they weren't lifting as much as I was worried that they would. Now, the other thing is they don't blend out really smoothly in some of the areas. You can definitely see that pencil texture, especially in the leaf and in other areas of the background. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. If you want a smooth wash, these may not be the best for you. That being said, coming in with the dry pencil later for details worked really well. The white wasn't my favorite, but it definitely did its job. And I was able to layer over the dry, washed out areas really easily with the pencil. Especially in that dark background, I was really impressed with how that worked out in the background. Now, obviously, the layering and the gritty texture, it's still there. But I was pretty happy and I was pretty satisfied with how this came out, considering the bad luck I've had with these pencils in the past. Now, I do have a video about these pencils when I first tried them, and I really enjoyed them in the first video that I used them in. It wasn't until I really started working with other water-soluble pencils that I was kind of like, oh, these fall a little bit short. Can you get beautiful results with them? Absolutely. Can you build them up and get the saturation that you're after? For the most part. You will see later on, these don't tend to be as vibrant as some of the other colors, but if you're looking for something subtle and a little bit more almost like earthy, then these are a great pencil for that. And you really can't beat the pricing either. I was looking at prices on Blick, and of course, prices will definitely vary depending on where you are. I am in the US, and so I'm going according to prices in the US. Some of these products might be more expensive where you are in the world or might be harder to get. But these are available at Blick, Jerry's Artorama, Cult Pens, Jackson's Art Supply, Amazon, and a bunch of other places. And for the 12 set, it's pretty reasonable. It's just under $20 at $19.79. Their 24 set is $38.99. Their 36 set is $58.19. Their 72 set comes in at $116.39, and open stock they are $2.07 each. This is the second cheapest of the pencils that you're going to see in this video. So this is on the more reasonably priced end. And that's not too bad if you consider, you know, some of the other pencils you're going to see are going to be really pricey. Even if you're comparing this with their counterpart, which comes from the same company, which you'll see later on in this video, the Derwent Inktense. Though, you know, it's kind of one of those situations that this might be a starter pencil for you in the realm of watercolor pencils. Now, let's move on to the Koh I Noor Mondeluz pencils. Okay, so taking a quick look at their color chart, and I will link all of these color charts and other resources in the description below, but here is a look at their color chart. They also offer 72 colors, and they have sets of 12, 24, 36, and 72. They also have a few fun and different kinds of sets. I have reviewed their gray tone set on the channel before, and I think they also have a portrait set as well. For the lightfast ratings, they do offer lightfast ratings on their color chart online. But they do theirs on a star rating, with 1 star being fugitive and 4 stars being excellent. And their breakdown is that they have 4 that are listed as 1 star, 17 that are listed as 2 stars, 24 listed as 3 stars, and 27 listed as 4 stars. So that is really not too bad as far as lightfast ratings go. And of course, bearing in mind, we don't know if any of these companies have tested these after they've been washed out with water. I know Derwent has said that they haven't tested their water-soluble media after it's been washed out. So this is a risk that we always kind of take when we're dealing with a water-soluble pencil. So you need to keep that in mind as well. Any colors that are prone to fading will probably fade faster after they've been washed out with water. But I didn't think the ratio was too bad, considering this is actually the least expensive out of all the pencils in this video today. Again, prices are subject to change. If you're watching this video 4 years from now, the prices are probably different than what I am going to be listing in this video. And of course, they're going to vary depending on what region you are from. Okay, so taking a look at this pencil, this is another octagonal shaped pencil. It has the branding on the front and of course the little paintbrush to show you that it is water soluble. And the color of the barrel is painted to match the color that it is supposed to be, with gold writing and the end painted gold to give it a nice little jazzy detail. Okay, so starting off on my little section with the Koh I Noor Mondeluz. This one was pretty interesting because I was trying to make sure I could match up the colors pretty well to the Derwent. I have to say right off the bat, I was pretty impressed with the vibrancy of these pencils. Sorry, I have to tape things off a little bit. And I thought they washed out pretty well. They seem to dry just a little bit more vibrant than the Derwent watercolor pencils did. That being said, it probably took around the same amount of layers. These 2 sections were 2 of the sections that took me the longest because they are the less expensive pencils. Naturally, they're not going to be as pigmented as some of the others here, and so they required more layers for me to get to the vibrancy that I wanted. And I'm starting off much the same way that I did with the Derwent watercolor pencils. I am scratching the colors that I need for my petals on my aqua palette and then bringing it over with a wet brush just the same way I did with the Derwent. And I have to say that's also a great way to mix colors, because with either of these pencils, the Derwent and these Koh I Noor, I didn't have the exact colors that I needed for the petals, but I was able to mix them on the palette like you would with regular watercolors. So that's another plus to using a palette on the side when you are using water-soluble pencils. And then of course, as you saw in the background, I went directly in with my pencils and blended them out with water after. So they can be used both ways, just the same way that the Derwent watercolor pencils were able to be. Something to note when working with watercolor pencils is that for best results, it's good to let things dry between layers. If you don't, you can end up with what I call hot spots, which I got here a couple times when I was being too hasty, where the pencil kind of digs into the paper and leaves a lot of pigment, and it can be hard to reverse or to cover. And then also at times, it can be hard if the paper is just so slightly damp for you to get any layers of pencil on top. So it's good to let the layers dry in between, because then you can come in with your pencils and it grips more easily. And that goes for any of the pencils here. But I thought I would mention that because sometimes if you think you're not getting the layers you want, it could just be the fact that your paper is not dry enough. It may not be the pencil itself. So I had to keep that in mind when I was doing this comparison. And it did seem that I was able to get some pretty good layers with these pencils when I wanted to come in to do details. And the white worked fairly well as well. I needed to lighten up those center details with my white. It definitely is not the best white, and it took some finagling and some layers, but I did get there eventually. Now, you can also use them in a way that the pencil itself is really wet. And That's a little different than coming in with dry pencil on wet paper. Instead, you're coming in with wet pencil on dry paper. And the best way to do that is not by dipping your whole pencil in water, because you really don't want to risk damaging the wood of the pencil over time. But if you take your paintbrush and you wet it and then you wet the tip, just the core itself, with some water and then come in and draw on your dry paper, that will also lay down a thick layer of pigment, making it more opaque, and you're able to get the detail that way. And you're seeing a lot of that in this particular section because of all the details in the middle. And so that's why I decided to mention it here. Now let's talk a little bit about pricing. Blick only carries the sets 12 to 36, and they do not have these open stock. In fact, out of all the pencils here, I find here in the US that these are the hardest to get my hands on. And so they do have them available at Cult Pens, but they only have the 36 set. And Jackson's Art Supply has some, and Amazon also has various sets as well. And at the time of filming this, they are not available at Jerry's Artorama. The only place that I could find them open stock was a place called Hull's Art Supply and Framing, and they offer them open stock at $2.35 a pencil, which kind of seems expensive for this brand. I have never shopped there though, so I can't really give an opinion on their customer service or anything about that store, but I did find that online. Now the Blick prices as of right now, of course, these again are subject to change. Their 12 set is $14.44. Their 24 set is $25.95, and their 36 set is $39.90, again in US dollars. And so that is the cheapest in this list so far. Well, in general, this is the cheapest pencil that you will see me talk about in this video. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with them given their price point. Now, I actually started with these when I was younger. I think this was one of the first watercolor pencils that I had. I may have even had some of these before I ever had the Derwent watercolor pencils. I feel like when I was a teenager, these were much more readily available in my area. I think AC Moore may have had a lot of Koh I Noor before they closed. I don't really remember, and I don't know if Michael's did either, but I definitely had my hands on the 12 set when I was a teenager. This was my first real experience with watercolor pencils. And actually, I only had a few left at the time of me starting to plan this video. I only had a few left in my collection. So I ended up going out and buying the 24 set so that I could do this video. And I'm honestly not disappointed. I think that they are pretty good for their price. And as I mentioned in my video where I reviewed the gray tone set, I really wish Koh I Noor was more readily available, especially open stock here in the US, because I also love their polycolor colored pencils, which I think those are more readily available than the Mondeluz. But they have so many fun products. This company, they put out so many fun products, and I can find random products here and there in random places. Like sometimes I'll find Koh I Noor products in like TJ Maxx, but to find them consistently and to find them open stock has been a struggle. So that is something to keep in mind if you are here in the US. Now, if you are in Europe, you may have more of an easy time accessing them, though I don't know what the pricing structure is there. All in all, I think these are another good starter pencil. They layer pretty well. They're pretty vibrant for their price point. The only downfall is they may not be as readily available open stock, which is important if you fall in love with a specific color and you want to be able to replace it without buying a whole other set. Okay, so now we are moving on to the Caran Supracolor, which is the less expensive of the two Caran pencils featured in this video. This one has some pretty interesting set sizes. They offer 120 colors with sets of 12, 18, 30, 40, 80, and of course 120 set. And then they also are available in different specialty sets that you can find on the Caran website. Lightfast information is available on the side of the pencil itself and of course on their color chart, which you can see here. And they do a 3-star rating, with 3 stars being excellent, 2 stars being very good, 1 star being good. And the breakdown is that there are 6 rated 1 star, 69 of them are rated 2 stars, and 45 of them are rated 3 stars. So most of these are squarely in the middle. And here you can see this is a beautiful pencil, octagonal in shape, the classic Caran branding. It says the line, it has the paintbrush to show that it's water soluble, and the barrel is painted to match the color that it is supposed to be. Now, again, I am starting off in the background, going in with my dry pencils, and I will be coming in later on to wash it out with water. And then I will be working on the petal much the same way that I did with the other two pencils, where I will be scribbling my pencil on the palette and then bringing it over with a wet brush and working it up in layers. Now, this is actually the only pencil that I didn't really have any experience with before I started researching for this video. I actually bought these specifically so I could try them out, because a lot of you saw my recent video where I tried out the Caran Museum Aquarelle and told me that I should try these. And so I said, you know what the heck? I'm going to be doing a comparison video. I might as well throw these in the mix. And originally, I was going to put the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer pencils in this slot on the page because I wanted to keep the less expensive pencils up top and then the more expensive pencils on bottom. But then I decided I wanted to be able to have the brands that have two pencils in this video near each other so you could see a side-by-side comparison. And so what I am doing is I'm going to have the Supracolor up here, and then just below it will be the Museum Aquarelle. And then I'm going to have the Albrecht Durer in the middle on the bottom, and my Derwent Inktense will be all the way to the left underneath the Derwent Watercolor. So that way there, if you are trying to decide between two of these pencils within one of these brands, you can see a side-by-side comparison. Now, right off the bat, the thing that I noticed was it was really interesting trying to blend that background. It felt a little thick, almost gouache-like, and you can kind of see, like, it did not blend out as smoothly as some of the pencils in the previous panels, which I thought was really interesting. And I think it really has to do with just how much it breaks down in the water. Some of these are going to, you'll see, some of them break down in water a lot more, become way more wishy-washy than others. This one's a little bit thicker. It's a little bit drier. Even when you're using a lot of water, it kind of has a dry feel to it, and it dries pretty fast, which can make it a little bit interesting when blending. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That can actually create a really painterly effect, kind of in the opposite way. Like, obviously, if you have a wishy-washy pencil, that can create some painterly effects as well. But this one can create some painterly effects in the fact that you're going to be able to see some visible brush strokes. Now, if you would like to see me do a video specifically on these pencils to have a closer look, let me know, because I have videos for some of the other pencils here. As I mentioned, I've done one for Derwent Watercolor. I have a ton for Inktense. I've done one specifically for the Museum Aquarelle and the Albrecht Durer, but I have not done one specifically for this pencil. And I have done some for the Koh I Noor, but again, that was just the gray tones. So if you'd like to see me do a specific video on that brand as well, let me know in the comments below. Now, the other thing that I noticed right off the bat is how vibrant these were. This is where things really started picking up the pace in this piece. It did not take me long to get the vibrancy that I needed. It didn't take me long to get the layers in. I didn't need as many layers to get the saturation that I needed for this section. The pencils layered fairly well on top. They were really vibrant. The white wasn't too bad. But the only thing that I noticed is that there was definitely a lot of the pencil texture when just using the pencil dry. You can see where I go in with detail on some of the leaves and even in some of the petals that it didn't blend dry as well as some of the other ones did. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just an observation. Now let's talk a little bit about pricing. These are the most expensive in the video so far. They are more expensive than the Derwent Watercolor, the Koh I Noor Mondeluz, and the Albrecht Durer. However, they are still cheaper than the Inktense and the Caran Museum Aquarelle. As of the time of this filming, their 12 set is $24.70, which is about $4 more than what the Albrecht Durer cost in a 12 set. The 18 is $37.78. The 30 is $65, the 40 is $89.05, the 80 is $183.20, and the 120 set is $222.93. But what's interesting is their open stock price is only $2.08 on Blick right now, which is actually less expensive than the Derwent Inktense open stock. And Also, as you get higher in the sizes of their sets, it gets more and more expensive per pencil within the set. And so for their larger sets, it actually turns out to be cheaper to just go and buy the colors you want open stock than it is to buy a set, which I thought was really interesting because most pencils, it's the other way around. If you buy in bulk, you're getting a really good discount per pencil, but that's not the case with the Caran pencils when you start to get into their bigger sets. The smaller sets, not bad, but the bigger sets, it's very strange. I did really enjoy working on this part of the piece, and I am intrigued to try these a little bit more. Something else that I noticed that I thought was interesting is that these dried pretty matte, especially in the darker areas. Much more so than the previous two pencils. Again, it's really just giving me some gouache vibes, which is really kind of cool, I think. And it makes it easier to photograph. There's not much glare. Not that any of these pencils are really overly shiny, but these look particularly matte. These are pretty widely available in sets and open stock. They're available at Jerry's Artarama, Cult Pens, Jackson's Art Supply, and Amazon, as well as Blick, which again are the prices that I'm referencing. So if you do really like these and you want to buy more colors, you'll be able to get them open stock. You'll be able to find them at a lot of different places. I actually found these in a gift shop at a garden here in Maine, so I thought that that was pretty interesting. Really, the vibrancy on these is just absolutely gorgeous, though. It is obviously the most vibrant in the piece so far, and they really are very beautiful pencils. This is one of my favorite pencils to hold. It just feels like a quality pencil. I really love that shiny, like, lacquer paint feel around the outside. For some reason, that just feels more high quality to me than the other two pencils that I've previously showed. And they are a little bit more heavy in the hand too. Not uncomfortable in any way. They just feel like a quality product, and I definitely enjoyed that. I do think that these were quite enjoyable to work with. I love how fast it was to get the saturation I needed. Again, I was a little bit iffy about some of the blending in that background, but for the most part, these are obviously a very quality pencil. I kind of wish they had a few more light fast colors, though I was happy that there wasn't a lot of fugitive colors. For the price point, I'm not sure, though. Like, it's really difficult because I do love Caran products, but they do tend to be some of the pricier products out there. And I don't know that these are necessarily worth the price given the light fastness ratio and the fact that some of the colors aren't as fun to blend as others. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I enjoyed it. I was happy to see it work up so well. Definitely can't beat that vibrancy, like, but I don't know. Like, I'm on the fence about this one. I know a lot of you love these. I'm gonna have to work with them a little bit more. Now we're moving on to the Caran Museum Aquarelle. These are the bougie sister of the Caran Supracolor. These ones are, they're pretty pricey. So let's get down to the specs. This one, they also have kind of some odd sets in them. There's 76 colors in the line, and then they have a set of 12, 2 sets of 20, a set of 40, and then a set of 76. Now, the really cool thing about this is that this is the only pencil in this video that not only gives you the light fast information, and it gives it right on the side of the pencil and in their color chart, but also on the color chart, it gives the pigment information. Now, all of these items, including the Inktense, are pigment-based items, but this is the only pencil where they disclose which pigments they're using. And I think for those pigment nerds out there that are watching, that's something really special. Now, taking a closer look at the pencil itself, this is octagonal. Of course, it has the typical Caran branding on it. It has a black barrel, and the end of the barrel is painted to match the color, with, of course, the little paintbrush to signify they're water-soluble, and they do come pre-sharpened. They do feel high quality, but to me, they feel lighter weight than the Supracolor. These are also available open stock. Let's take a little bit of a look here and see how this builds up. Now, I recently just did a video about these pencils, and I gotta tell you, when I did that video, I fell in love. I was really, really impressed with these pencils. I love the way they layer. I love the way that I am able to blend them out and use them wet, use them dry. They're a pretty darn good pencil. That being said, of course, they are going to be on the pricey side. These are the most expensive pencils in this video. And part of that is because they're Caran d'Ache, but part of that is probably because of the pigment information and the lightfast information. So let's get down to the lightfast information. Now, they rate these a little bit differently than they rate their Supracolor in the fact that they do a star system that's 1 through 5 stars. So it's a little bit more specific. And again, this is the blue wool scale. And 1 is the least lightfast and 5 is excellent. They have 0 pencils that are rated 1 star in this line. And then they have 1 that's rated 2 stars. And then they have 5 that are rated 3 stars, 10 that are rated 4 stars, and 60 that are rated 5 stars, which is fantastic. So when you are investing in a pencil like this, you are investing in a truly artist grade pencil. You're going to have all the information that you need, and you are going to feel very confident that your work's not going to just sit there and fade in 10 days on the wall. So that is something that I really love about this line. Now, as you can tell, super vibrant. It has not taken me long to get to that vibrancy. You can tell, especially in the petal, where the vibrancy almost matches the Supracolor counterpart with just a few watered down layers. And when we get further along in the background, you will see it does not take long for it to build up to that dark color. And it did not dry as matte looking as the Supracolor did. So that's one reason why I put them side by each. And even in the leaves, you can see that the vibrancy of the green, it just really, really pops. Again, this one did not take me very long to build up. Now, some of the colors I do find are a little bit scratchier. So again, in the background, I had a little bit of issues there because when I come back in with my dark green pencil, and I don't remember the specific color at the moment, I think it might be moss green. I used a lot of it in my previous video. It kind of left some little scratchy texture on the dry parts of the background. The dry pencils, they're a little bit harder, I think. That being said, that doesn't mean you can't get a smooth blend. I was kind of working on a time crunch when I did every single section of this. So obviously, if I had more time and I was working really vigorously with just a single kind of pencil, I would be able to get to that point. But I just thought that it was an interesting observation. And again, that wasn't with all the colors. It was just kind of with that dark green color. I believe, like I said, it's the moss green. And yeah, I actually really do love that color, though. I have used it a lot. I already have another one in my cart on Blick so that I can replace this one. So obviously, that has not deterred me from using that color. These are a high quality pencil. I am able to layer them really, really easily. I'm not getting as much lifting as I do with some of the other pencils in this video. And so I'm able to layer transparently. I can come in with my washes of color that I pull off of the palette, or I can let the paper dry, come over it with my pencils, wash it out again, and go over it with water without disturbing the layers below too much. And I was able to do that pretty well with the Supracolor as well, and the other two as well, though there was a little bit more lifting with the Supracolor and the Koh I Noor than with these, and even a little bit more with the Derwent Watercolor Pencils. They're beautiful. They're kind of living up to their museum name. Now let's talk a little bit about the prices. Open stock on Blick per pencil, $3.12. The 12 set is $36.40, the 20 set is $60.29, the 40 set is $118.46, and the 76 set is $245.38. Now, this again kind of has that weird situation, I think, where things start to get more expensive with the larger sets. And so it might be better if you, instead of buying the 76 set, you might be better off just buying things open stock. I think I have the 40 set. I was really happy with the 40 set for the price. Like, I really can't complain because it has so many light fast colors. There's just so many light fast colors in this line that you're really getting what you pay for, as opposed to some of these lines, if you buy the full set, while it might feel cheaper per pencil when you buy in bulk, if you're getting rid of or donating your fugitive colors, then it kind of becomes more expensive per pencil than it seems when you are first buying a set. But with these, at least you're going to be keeping a hunk of the pencils. You're going to have a lot of pencils to work with because there's no actual 1-star pencils in here, and then there's only a few that are on the lower end of lightfast. So again, this is one of those situations where, yes, it's really pricey, but if you can invest in it and if you're selling your work, you might want to consider these pencils. Okay, so moving on to the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer now. There are 120 colors in this line, and just like with all of Faber-Castell's other artist lines, the colors match up. So if you have the polychromos or you have the Pitt pastels or the Pitt pens, the colors will all match with the colors in this line. And I love that Faber-Castell does that because it keeps things nice and consistent. Now, let's take a look at lightfast ratings. They use a star system, and they rate them 1 through 3 stars, with 3 being excellent lightfastness, and of course, 2 being somewhere in the middle, and 1 being fugitive or not good. Now, there are 8 colors that are rated 1 star, 48 colors that are rated 2 stars, and 64 colors rated 3 stars, making this the line that has the most excellent rated lightfast colors in their line in this video. And so they have 4 more pencils that are rated excellent than the Museum Aquarelle by Caran. Now, that being said, there's 120 colors in this line, whereas there are only 76 colors in the Museum Aquarelle line. So, of course, there should be more lightfast colors in this one. And also, the Museum Aquarelle does not have any fugitive colors, whereas this line does. So there's kind of the comparison there. Now, they have sets of 6, 12, 24, 36, 60, and 120. So they have a fun variety of sets, which makes it really interesting. It's nice that you can buy a set of 6 to really try them out before you start using them and see if you like them, so you don't have to invest in a very large set. And of course, they are available open stock. Now, they have the beautiful patented Faber-Castell branding. The whole entire pencil is painted to look like the color that it's supposed to be. And of course, it has that nice shellac to it, similar to the Supracolor pencil, which makes it just so comfortable to hold and feels nice and luxurious in the hand. They do come pre-sharpened, and they have the lightfast ratings right on the side. Now, jumping into this part. As you can tell, these are probably the most watery of any of the pencils we have used today. They just spur out in water so fast, as opposed to like the Caran Supracolor, where they felt a little bit more like gouache. These are definitely way more wishy-washy, feel way more like a regular watercolor. And because of that, you want to build up in light layers. And these layers tend to be a little bit lighter than some of the others we've seen so far. It's not building up to be as vibrant as quickly as, say, the Museum Aquarelle or the Supracolor that we just saw before then. But that does not mean it will not be vibrant. It is Faber-Castell. They're a pretty darn good company, so it will get there. It just is going to take a little bit of extra time. And because they wash out so much more, you're going to see more blooms and more of the watercolor effect. And that can make it a little bit interesting to control with the brush. So that's something to keep in mind if you are somebody who comes from a watercolor background and you are someone who really likes the painterly, flowy watercolors. This might be the pencil for you to transition to if you want to get into watercolor pencils. Whereas if you're somebody who likes to have a little bit more control, you might want something like the Museum Aquarelle or even the Supracolor. And you can tell, like, look how watery those petals look compared to the petals that came before them when they were in this phase. Now, I recently did a video on these pencils, and I was using the Fluid 100 hot press watercolor paper. And I struggled a little bit to get the layers that I wanted and to get the saturation I wanted. They were looking pretty dull. I was relieved to see that they definitely were working up on the Arches hot press paper a lot better than they did that other paper. So this is a prime example. This pencil here is the very reason why I am like, oh my gosh, the paper is super important. Now, I've always known that paper is important, but I've never really struggled with the Fluid 100 paper before. I did with these. And so if you have any type of material and you're trying it out and you're not liking it, switch the surface up and see if that helps, because you don't want to put away a pencil and just think, oh, it must be junk, when really it could just be the fact that it just didn't work well with the surface that you were trying it on. Now, I was pretty impressed with that white pencil. Again, I mentioned that with the swatches. Faber-Castell's Polychromos white, to me, is next to useless. And so when I saw that this white worked fairly well, I was like, wow, like, that's really exciting, because I didn't expect that from Faber-Castell. Something else that I took notice of was that because these are such a watery pencil when you wash them out, they are also easier to lift, which is nice when you're trying to make corrections, but it can be difficult when you're trying to layer. You have to be very careful about water control when it comes to something like that. It's definitely a little bit extra important that you make sure the layers dry in between, unless you want to get that flowy look where you can create that kind of bloom and that watercolory look, which I was kind of going with here. It's one of those things where you want to work with the pencil and you want to work with the properties it's giving you to get different results. And so I was kind of going with the flow here with that. But if you want, again, a lot of control, you just need to be careful with the amount of water you're using on subsequent layers, because you can lift the layers below. Now, all of these are like that to a certain degree, other than obviously the Inktense are a little bit harder to lift. And within each range, some colors are going to lift more easily than others, because that's just how pigments work. Some are higher staining than others. And without having the pigment information, because of course, like I mentioned, the only company that discloses their pigment information is Caran, and that's only with their Museum Aquarelle. But without having the actual pigment information, you may not know ahead of time if a color is going to be high staining or not. And again, that's something you have to deal with all of them. But with these pencils in particular, overall, it was easier to lift if I needed to make corrections or do special effects. The vibrancy for these really starts to come out most once we start using the pencil on top of the washed out layers. That's obvious for all the other petals as well. But with this in particular, putting the pencil down and then washing it out just is a whole different world than using the palette method. Whereas when I was working with, say, the Museum Aquarelle, using the palette method, the vibrancy worked up so fast on the paper without me even having to put the pencils on top. And I didn't have to use as much of the dry pencil on top as I will have to with the Faber-Castell portion. That being said, it really does pop once we start putting the pencil on there, washing it out, and then coming back on dry with additional detail. So this one took me a little bit longer than the Caran Supracolor and the Museum Aquarelle, just because of the way that they needed to be layered in order to bring it up to the saturation. But of course, once it gets there, it really does pop really well. So let's talk a little bit about pricing. Their 6 set is $9.73. Their 12 is $20.60. Their 24 set is $34.07. Their 36 set is $46.30. Their 60 set is $78.95. And their 120 set is $175.10. In open stock, they are $2.04. So they are third in line as far as the cheapest in the video. They are more expensive, obviously, than the Koh I Noor or the Derwent Watercolor, but less expensive than the Supracolor Museum Aquarelle and the Inktense. These definitely are a unique pencil, especially when it comes to water control. I'm somebody who likes a lot of control, so I'm a little back and forth on them, though I am very happy that I gave them a second chance on this paper, and I will have to play around with them a little bit more in the future, but they definitely felt different to me than the others as far as the working routine goes. All in all, though, these are a fairly priced pencil. They have fantastic lightfast ratings, and if you are somebody who already has some of the other Faber-Castell lines, you may benefit from having the matching colors, and if you also like a nice wishy-washy watercolory look, these may be the pencils for you. All right, folks, here we go. We're jumping right into the Inktense now. Ooh, baby. So I have the color chart here, but it does not appear that they have added their new colors. They originally had 72 colors in this line, but have recently just added additional colors to make it 100. So a lot of the stats I'm going on here are based on the original 72 colors because that's what's on their color chart. So again, they do the number rating 1 through 8 for their lightfast ratings. And again, 1 to 2 means fugitive or not stable, 3 to 4 is fair and moderate, 5 to 6 is good or very good, and 7 and 8 is excellent. So as far as fugitive colors go, they have 0 colors that are rated 1 and 2. In the fair to moderate category, they have 2 colors that are rated 3 and 4 that are rated 4. In the good, very good category, they have 2 that are rated 5 and 12 that are rated 6. And then they have 51 colors that are rated excellent. That's 16 that are rated 7 and 34 that are rated 8. They also have 1 color that falls between moderate and good, and it's rated a 4-5. Derwent has been open about the fact that they have not tested their colors once they've been washed out with water, though I don't know that any of the other companies have either, so it's just something that you have to take precautions on when you are working with any water-soluble media. Now, according to the Derwent frequently asked questions, because I know that this comes up a lot of people think that these may be dye-based, but according to Derwent, they are actually pigment-based, but as we spoke about before, they don't disclose the pigments that are used. Now, let's talk a little bit about the sets that they offer. They offer sets of 6, 12, 24, 36, 72, and 100. So again, similar to the Albrecht Durer, they have a wide range of sets available and you can start off small. Now, this product is also available as blocks and as pans as well. So that's another fun way that you can be a little bit adventurous with this product, and you have a variety of options. Now, taking a look at the pencil itself, they come pre-sharpened. They have the patented Derwent thick barrel with the tip painted to match what the color's supposed to be. Of course, it says Derwent Inktense. It has the brush there to signify that it is indeed water soluble. Now we're going to hop right in like we have been, and we're going to start off by using the palette method to paint the underlayers of the petal. And then, of course, we'll come in the background with the pencils later on. Now, let's talk about a few of the things that set these apart from regular watercolor pencils. As I mentioned previously, these are classified as a watercolor product according to Derwent, but were formulated specifically so that they look like an ink when they are washed out. And they really do live up to that name. They are vibrant, they are beautiful, and they don't lift as easily as regular watercolor pencils. That being said, in my experience, and I've been working with Derwent Inktense since probably around the time that they came out, there are ways to lift. So if you're worried that you won't be able to correct mistakes, there are still ways. If you have not washed out your pigment completely with water, you can lift pretty easily still, and it will continue to wash out as well. That's the other thing, like they're considered permanent, but it really depends on how well you've washed them out before, because if you didn't wash it out completely, when you come back in with water, it can still move. And then, of course, when it's still wet, you can lift. And once it's dry, you can erase fairly easily as well. So there are different ways to correct things if you are working with Inktense. Now, as you can see, I am just building up those layers with dry pencil in the background. I will come in and wash them out in a moment. These also dry a little bit matte, similar to the Supracolor by Caran, but I feel like a little less matte than the Supracolor. And you'll see that once the background completely dries. But I always kind of compare these a little bit to a gouache as well, but of course a little more permanent and maybe a little bit more vibrant than a gouache. And I have probably the most experience with these than any other pencil in this video. And so it's going to be worked up a lot quicker, but because they're so vibrant and because they're easy to layer, this is a quick section to begin with. Now, the thing that I love about these is the amount of control. It is one of those things where I am able to layer with ease without worrying that things are going to lift. But I was really surprised when I was working with some of the other pencils, such as the Museum Aquarelle and even like the Koh I Noor, that those pencils didn't lift nearly as much as I expected them to. Given my experience with Inktense and the fact that they don't lift easily at all, I was pleasantly surprised that I was still able to layer pretty well with some of the other pencils in this video. So don't discount the other pencils on that factor alone, because you are still able to layer and get transparency and do all that without lifting all the layers beneath in some of the other pencils as well. It just may be a little bit more difficult, and you just kind of have to be more careful with your water control, as we saw with the Albrecht Durer watercolor pencils. Something else that I noticed after working with all the others in this video have an octagonal barrel on them, and this is the only one that has the round barrel, and boy, let me tell you, was I chasing my pencils more. I was used to being able to just set them down and them not roll away. These Inktense ones roll all around on my desk, and my floors are kind of uneven, so I just thought that that was kind of funny. I'd never thought anything of it before using Inktense, but after using the other ones directly before, it was really noticeable. You can see I'll be going back and forth now with the pencils. I had a lot of fun with this, and now that that background is dry, you can see that it is definitely more matte than some of the others, but it has a much smoother background than the Caran Supracolor. So let's talk a little bit about pricing. As of right now on Blick, the 6 set is $13.19, the 12 set is $25.79, the 24 set is $51.59, the 36 set is $77.39, 72 set is $154.79, and the full set of 100 is $216. That puts these at the second most expensive pencil in this video, putting it just behind the Museum Aquarelle by Caran. But that being said, they're kind of a specialty item. The way they advertise them, the way they formulated them, I'm not at all surprised that they tend to be a little bit on the pricier end. But again, you can start off small. If you haven't tried the Inktense yet, you can get a 6 set, and you can also buy them open stock, and they are $2.87 per pencil as of the time of this video. And again, that's always subject to change. They are available at a wide range of places, such as Jerry's Artorama, Cult Pens, Jackson's Art Supply, Amazon, you name it. They're in a lot of different places. I think this is one of Derwent's most popular lines of pencil, and so you shouldn't struggle too hard finding it, though again, in a different region of the world, I'm not sure what your access will be. Now, as per usual, I am coming through with lighter washes, and then I'm coming back in with my pencil for detail. And if you want to learn more about Inktense, I have a complete playlist on my channel. I have done a ton of videos with these pencils. Again, this is my most used pencil in this video. I have the most experience with these. And these are actually what made me fall back in love with watercolor pencils, or water-soluble pencils in general. As I mentioned, I had played around with some of the Koh I Noor when I was in high school, and I think maybe some of the Derwent watercolor pencils. But when I got using these when they first came out, I fell in love, and that's what made me want to explore, and that's why I decided to invest in the Albrecht Durer. And then, of course, the rest is kind of history, and that's how we ended up in this video. So I couldn't not include them in the video. I wanted to see how the other pencils stacked up against them. And I think that these will probably still continue to be my favorite. Part of that could be the fact that I'm just so familiar with them, and it's like an old friend, but I just can't help it. I can't help myself. I love my Inktense. So the white, as I mentioned previously, it's not a bad white. I feel like the Caran Museum Aquarelle, the white is a little bit better. Again, if you want to have a really nice opaque white in this pencil line, then I suggest buying the block open stock, because their block is highly concentrated and you can paint it on like a watercolor, and it is much more opaque because of that. Okay, so here is the final piece. I can't even believe it. They actually blended together a lot better than I expected. I expected some of these to be like really faded compared to the others. If you didn't watch this video, you may not even know that I had used different pencils, although I can really see the seams. Here is the scanned-in version, where you can see a little bit more of the detail. And I have here a scanned-in version that has it sectioned off, so you can see where each one of these pencils lie on the page. And it gives us a better view of which ones are more vibrant, which ones blended out more easily. All in all, I can't say that I dislike any of these pencils. I feel like the Derwent Watercolor and the Koh I Noor both did pretty well for their price range. I have to say, I think the Koh I Noor might feel a little bit more vibrant and a little bit more robust, and so that is the cheapest of the two more bargain priced pencils in this video. However, access to the Derwent Watercolor is a little bit more easy to come by, at least here in the US. And so that's something that you might want to factor in if you're just starting out and you want a starter pencil. Though both of these least expensive pencil lines have the same amount of excellent lightfast colors in their lines, they each have 27 that are rated as excellent lightfast, which obviously they're not the highest lightfast in this video, with the Derwent having more fugitive than the Koh I Noor. So that's something to factor in as well. If you are just starting out in watercolor pencils and you want a nice starter pencil, that will also give you some light fast results. Now, looking at the pencils that are kind of in the mid-price range, the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer along with the Caran Supracolor. The Caran Supracolor are a little bit more expensive. As you can tell, they didn't blend out as smoothly as the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer. As you heard me talk about, the Supracolor feel a little bit more gouache-like to me, whereas the Albrecht Durer are really extra watery compared to the rest in this video. So they're kind of opposite ends of extremes, though they're both vibrant and beautiful. And the Faber-Castell has a lot more light fast colors in it. I feel like they might have a few more that are like rated 1. However, they have 64 colors that are rated excellent, which is almost 20 more than the Caran Supracolor. And the Supracolor, again, is more pricey. And the Albrecht Durer has the added bonus that their colors match all the other artist lines that the Faber-Castell company puts out. But when it comes down to this, if you're going for this mid kind of price range, it really depends on your working properties, because if you're somebody who likes a little bit of the dry feeling, then you might want to go more for the Supracolor. But if you are somebody who likes the wishy-washy watercolor feeling, then you might want to go more towards the Faber-Castell Albrecht Durer, though keep in mind it might take a little bit more time to build up to the saturation that you like with the Albrecht Durer. Now, we're moving into the more expensive categories. We have the Caran Museum Aquarelle and the Derwent Inktense. The Derwent Inktense, man, they're such a standalone. They are such a standalone pencil. They're beautiful. Again, they were created to look like ink. So you're going to have the vibrancy there. You're going to have the layering there. They're really, you know, like I said, they're their own thing. However, the Caran Museum Aquarelle, they are a beautiful pencil, and they have a leg up on the rest of the competition in the fact that they actually provide the pigment information, and they have a lot of light fast colors in their line as well. They're the second most light fast line in this video, and if you know anything about pigments and you're a pigment nerd, then you can also use that information to decide for yourself if it's worth it to you. But again, the Museum Aquarelle is going to be the priciest in this line, but you are getting beautiful results no matter which pencil you choose when you're kind of getting up there in this higher price range. And also, I have to say, as coming from a background with Derwent Inktense, when I tried the Museum Aquarelle, I really didn't have any trouble layering. So if you're concerned about the fact that the Museum Aquarelle might lift a little bit more easily, I didn't really struggle with layering when it came to that. Comparing the pencils that come from the same company, the Caran Museum Aquarelle, again, is going to be more expensive than the Supracolor, but I have to say that I did enjoy working with them a little bit more than working with the Supracolor. They are both vibrant, they're both beautiful, but I feel like the blendability is much better with the Museum Aquarelle, though I feel like the Supracolor feels nicer in the hand and is a little bit more comfortable, but again, that's just kind of a personal preference thing. And then, of course, if you're going to compare the Derwent Watercolor with the Derwent Inktense, They are specifically formulated to be different. We know that the Derwent Watercolor probably has the least saturation out of any pencil in this video to begin with, whereas the Derwent Inktense is made to go above and beyond when it comes to saturation compared with other water-soluble media. And so, obviously, if you're comparing the two of those, Inktense is probably going to come out on top every time. Okay, folks, if you're still here, at the end of this video, you're a pal, you're a champion, you're amazing. If you're still here at the end of this one, please let me know in the comments below what your favorite watercolor pencil is from this video, and if there's any that you would like to try from this video that you haven't before, let me know that as well. Also, if you'd like to see more videos like this, more comparison videos, drop the idea in the comments below, because I always look through all the comments and it really helps me to decide what to do next. So if you'd like to see different pencils compared, or if you'd like to see a video on a specific pencil in this video, please let me know, because I'm always trying to listen to y'all and give you what you want. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe so you can see more like it, and I will see you next week. You have a fantastic day. Bye.